Welcome back to 52 Moments, where I answer things like,
Tell me about your childhood.
or,
What is your malfunction?
or even,
Why are you so wonderful and magical?
as best I can. Along the way, I hope you'll learn more about me. So let's get to it. This episode is called Little Red Hen, and it is about the first time I was cast in anything. I was 5. In kindergarten, I started out at one school and moved halfway through the year to another. And um, they were going to be putting on a little production at the end of the year of the Little Red Hen. I don't remember exactly how I ended up as the Little Red Hen, but probably because I was a precocious child and knew the story by heart. So knowing the knowing the lines that were necessary probably came fairly easy to me. So, if you're not familiar with the story of the Little Red Hen, it's kind of like having the worst roommates. And it's just a weird little story about how everybody needs to pitch in. So, the Little Red Hen is doing all the work in the house, like she does everything. And this is kind of typical. So, one day she finds some wheat and she grows the wheat and she harvests the wheat and she takes it to the mill and she brings back the flour and she bakes a cake. And because all the way along she's been asking her roommates, there's a cat and a dog and a mouse, because, interspecies accommodation was apparently a big thing in the 70s or 60s or whenever the story, I think the story is actually an old folk tale. Um, but anyway, all of these animals living under one roof, not eating each other, basically keep to themselves and don't want to do any of the work. So when the cake comes out of the oven, she's like, okay, who wants cake? Too bad. I'm eating it all. And then, like a glutton, she eats it all. But after that, everybody helped out. And it's like, really? Really, the passive aggressive move? That's what won you? But anyway, I mean, that was my first role. And my mother had made me a dress that had farm animals on it. Like, I remember roosters. And I still have the dress, amazingly. This is the dress. Little tiny thing. I mean, that went down to my knees. Um, at some point, my mom scavenged the zipper out of it for another project. But this is it. You can see there are roosters on there. There is also, I think, pigs. But it's mostly chickens, roosters, whatever. So this is what I wore. I loved that dress. It just fit me well. But when it came time to perform, I was a little stage fright-y. And I ended up reaching into the back of my dress and kind of twisting it, like basically right around butt level. So I was probably showing off my underwear to half the audience. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things that I wore that dress a lot. Here's me at my 6th birthday wearing that dress. And eventually I just outgrew it. And so, yeah, my mom salvaged the zipper. There's a little stain around the bottom and that sort of thing. But I loved, even though I was nervous, I loved performing. I loved the feedback that I got from the audience, the applause. The first time you get up and perform and get applause, that leaves a lasting impression. So that's kind of how I got interested in performing, and that's definitely carried through my life. It's ebbed and flowed, of course, but I've always kind of liked being on stage, and sometimes there's still stage fright, but most of the time I just power through and fall apart after if I'm going to. But usually, if I'm honest, the applause kind of cuts through any of the panic. So unless I bomb on stage, I generally am okay to carry on. But I still think I'm amazed that I still have this dress. My plan is to put it into a shadow box with a photo of me wearing the dress so that there's context, possibly with a copy of the Little Red Hen as well, if I can find a small board book or something. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things that I think about a lot. Like, honestly, every time before I go on stage, I think about, not showing the nervous tics of, scrunching up the dress or whatever. And yeah, so that's about it. I just wanted to do a little quick one today, and I've really been wanting to bring out the dress and talk about it. Um, yeah, so I want to thank Mrs. Shade, my kindergarten teacher, for casting me in that role and really setting me on a path as a performer. So now you know a little bit more about me, and I hope you'll come back again. Thanks.